And we're back. So, but to log in again in your application of the Windows level, they do not know your user login and password inside the application. So they're using the one from Windows, and that is not good. Also, and that is really bad. Yes, the window is locked, you cannot modify the data. However, if you put your mouse in the taskbar over the icon of your program, you will see the window. It will appear full size on the screen with all the data visible. So, yes, it is locked, but it is locked with a transparent window, which is not what you want to do when you want to protect the data. So, also there's another problem that bugs me, is that to get to the login window, you have to click in 3 different places. Nothing has the focus. It looks like the thing has never been tested. It really bugs me. So I decided not to use their solution and instead to code it. And it's been quite easy to code it. There was no big problem. This is something that has been worked on by Fred B. from France, and finished by me on different level because he didn't have the time to finish before going on vacation and then restarting to work like crazy when he came back. So that's collaboration. How does that work? The system is quite simple. There are events, timer, and counter involved. We are using the DDW function to obscure all windows. The same login than at the beginning is needed, the same login, the exact same login. This means that if I was logged in the program and you arrive behind me and you want to unlock the application, your username and login will not work, even though they are valid for the application. That is because you may not have the same permission and I do. You may not be allowed to see my documents. So if you can unlock my application with your login, again, it's a security flaw. All that is in a collection of procedure called CPR_Windows that contains all the code that is used for managing the Windows. And it's the lock XXXX functions. There are a few functions that are called. Yeah. So, in more, I don't think it's, I don't know if I have something afterwards to show you about that, but I can do it this way. Okay, so if we look in the global procedure, in the window procedure, we have lock countdown, lock delay expired, lock force DDW all, and lock push delay, lock restart, lock set delay, lock start. This is the whole locking system. Let's have a look at what is happening when we are locking the windows. And the beauty of that system is that you can, it is automatic, but you can also call it by code. You can decide at some point to lock the whole thing. So if I have this window and that window, and at any point I need to leave the office, I'm going to manually lock the thing. There you go. All the windows are now completely black, nothing readable, and you have the login window there with the focus at the right place, ready to log in. So this is a system that I find much more usable and much more secure than the one that is inside the system. And because it is available as source, you can use it easily, and you get all that. The code itself, you have one code to put at the beginning of the program in the first window that is open, and that is, I'm going to close all that. Give me 1 second. Hello? Okay. There. At the beginning of that window, you're going to have that. It's not even there. It's in the beginning of the project, sorry. My bad. Not the same system. So, at the end of the window, you have that code. And that is all you need to start the locking system. We're calling a function that sets the delay before we lock, and it's 5 minutes. As you can see, I'm writing it 5 multiplied by 60, so that I can see that it's basically 5 minutes very easily, instead of putting 300 and what is 300 and all that. Then once the delay is set, we're doing a log start, and then we start the timer from here this way. Because the timer started from the project initialization code, it is going to run for all the windows. If you start in a window, it's going to run only during the lifespan of that window. So you want to do it from here. The log start is just that. 3 events. Key down, left button down, and right button down. If one of these events happen inside one of the window, then it means that somebody is using the window. You may see that I'm not using mouse move, sorry. That's because somebody may be using something else and moving its mouse over your window to go somewhere else. He's not using your program, he's just using the system. So if the user press a key of the keyboard, that's key down, press the left button of the mouse or the right button of the mouse on any windows of your application, this is going to start to call that function. And that function push the delay again to 5 minutes. The delay may have been going down to 15 seconds. There's an event, it say, okay, 5 minutes again. So that is the mechanism that is going to prevent the machine, the application from locking down. And the one that is going to lock really is that. So on the timer, there's a function called lock countdown, and it is working here with a value that you can set in the collection of procedure, number of seconds to count down each time. You don't need to have that called. You don't need to have that called. That better? Okay. So you don't need to have that called from every second. You can do that every 10 seconds or every 20 seconds. It's just going to be the periodicity at which your counter is going to be reduced. Inside the procedure, as you can see, there's a lot of commands and trace at the beginning to make sure to debug things properly. But what we are doing is we're first checking if the application is already locked. If it's already locked, we're not doing anything because, well, we're waiting for it to be unlocked. If it is not locked, then we're just going to remove the interval between the time we're coming in there from the total. At the beginning, we had 300 seconds. Each 10 seconds, we are removing 10 seconds. And at that point, if the result is less or equal 0, then we're calling the other function that says, okay, the delay before locking has expired, and we are doing this. So, I don't know if you know that function, win rate www. That is a function that sets the rate of gray in a window when you're opening a model window. The model window behind becomes gray. I am using that function for something completely different. I am using it to make the window completely black, which is gray with a rate of 100%. So to do that, first I'm getting the current rate, normal rate set up in the program. I'm saving it. Then I'm setting it to 100, and you can see that, again, heavily commented. And then we are forcing each window as grayed at 100%. And immediately opening the login window as model so that it has control and be ready to unlock. So the remaining part is in there. And that is something that we're going to look at a little later, because it is using an array of structure to store the name and property of each window that has been opened by the program. And we're going to look at that later when we talk about the advanced UI. But here, basically, we are going through all the windows and forcing the DW value to the active status or inactive status. And that's all there is to it. This is all you need to lock your application. Now, inside each of the window, it is part of the window template, we have this lock button, and the code in it is really that, and only that. It is calling the same function, lock, delay, expired, and that's all. So, this test here is just because some windows may be used before the application is started. That's the windows that are used to initialize the database, initialize the first user, and all that. And that is a specific case that you need to avoid in here. That's all. So it's, yes.
Is there a reason you use black on the window as opposed to not visible equal false?
I wanted the window to still be visible. I wanted you to see that all your windows are locked. I didn't want you to have a login window and not knowing what's going on. So that was a choice. Yes, absolutely, I could have made all the windows invisible. That was possible also. And that may be a better solution, perhaps, in some cases, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. Jeff? No, there was not. It's just I thought that making the window invisible and just have this logging window would not be very intuitive. So I said, okay, black out all the windows. Those are your windows. You know where they were, and suddenly they're black, and suddenly there's this login that say your application has been locked. Login to unlock, and you are still visually in the middle of your application. That's just me. That may be silly. I don't know. It's yes, Art.
Since it's Windows, you can also go to other applications,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. How does your Windows still be invisible but black affect the ability of the user to go do something else saying, oh, it's locked, but that's no problem. I'll move it off to the side, and I'll do something else, then I'll come back to it.
Absolutely not.
They can still do all
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Your windows are locked, but that's all. You do Alt Tab, you go anywhere, you do whatever you want. It's not a problem. Your windows will come in front of the other, and that's all. No, you cannot do any. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it doesn't matter because your window from another program are going to come on top of them, so you don't care.
Click on the black window, does it go to the program underneath it?
No,
So it might be good to minimize,
no,
back them, minimize.
no, because if I minimize them, then I can just make them invisible. There's no point. The point is to have the windows visible so that you know that it's locked and you see the login there for that. That's exactly my point. You can change any way you want, but in my idea was to let the user see his application locked in however state it is. After that, you do Alt-Tab to go to something else, and you're good to go. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is the application of the user with everything there. So that's what I thought would work best. There's no perfect solution, and I'm sure that some people will not like it.
And those windows are going to close if a different user logs in?
No, a different user cannot log in.
Oh, okay, you restricted that.
Yeah, if a different user tries to log in, it says not valid. You can do it.
What about an admin or something like that?
At this point, in the current stage, nobody can log in but the user who left the application. Because it's not because somebody is an admin that he has the right to see the ultra-secret document that you are working on. So there's no way. In that case, I would need to make sure that all all the permission of the new user are at least equivalent to the permission of the other user. And that's kind of a nightmare I don't want to go into. So I decided, no, you lock the application or it's locked automatically, you unlock it. Sorry?
You know, like what would happen if somebody was to leave the office for a while and that machine now is just sitting there and somebody else needs to go access it?
You close the machine. There's no data access during that time, so sorry? Now, it is absolutely possible, and I think that, I'm not sure, I think that if you use the cancel button on that case, you're going to close the application. But yeah, anyway, if what you want is to be able to close the application in case of necessity, well, you add the close button there and you're done. And anybody who has the right on or anybody can close the application. That's the only thing that you need. Okay, so we're there. The next step in security is to decide who is allowed to do what. And for that, you need to give them a tool to set up that properly and in an easy way, as easy as possible at least, very practical, because if it's not practical, it's not going to be used. There is a built-in tool. It's the user groupware. The user groupware has a number of things that I don't like. First, it is too complex to use for a lot of people because of the sheer number of buttons, options, things that you can disallow, allow. Basically, you can tweak everything in the program, which may be great, but it's a nightmare to set up. So you need really to restrict access to some function, to the export of data, to seeing documents that are not yours, to all this kind of thing. And that it's not capable to do. You can tell this user does not have access to this button, but you cannot tell it does not have access to this data. So on one side it's too complex, and on the other side it's not complex enough. And one doesn't cancel the other, unfortunately. So Also, if you need to extend it, and very often you need to extend it, it's kind of a problem because it's a separate analysis, separate files. It crashes when you update WinDev because they change things in the groupware and they have no ascendant compatibility with the previous version. So you have to remove your groupware, put the new one in, and if you made change in the groupware, you have to redo them. Yeah, it's happening at each version, and each version you see the guys coming up in arms saying, well, it's not possible. Yes, it is. It's just the way it is. So it's not that difficult to create your own user groupware. And this is the kind of thing that I did. This is a screen copy of the user permission and role management. You've seen before in the user screen, you have a table of user. You can add a user, you can edit a user. All that is extremely normal, classic, all that kind of thing. You have this button, the permission button, here in the user form that allows you to access the permission window. And at that level, you're going to be able to either add with that button here any permission that you select here individually to the user, remove them, reset the whole thing, or go right here to the profiles where you can group permission under names and use the name to add a bunch of permission at once. So here you start by creating a user, you put your permission in, and you say, okay, this user is the perfect example of the IT guy. He needs to be able to do this, to do that, but he doesn't have access to the data or this part of data, and so on and so forth. Once you have your whole thing set up the way you like, you come to the profile, you click on the plus, it asks you for the name of the new profile, and you just enter it. And at that point, you have IT guy profile available. You create the next IT guy, you come in the profile here, you select IT guy, and you click on add, and you're done. This system, the way it is made today, is additive. And by that, I mean that if you have 10 different profiles in your system, you can add one, add another one, add a third one. And somebody can have the addition of all the permission of the three profiles. However, it is not linked to the profile at any point. We are adding the individual permission. We're not adding the name of the profile. For that reason, if you change the permissions that are in a profile, you are not changing the user. You're just changing the profile. This is the way I coded it. I'm not saying it's the only way or the best way. It's the way I coded it. I'm just giving you the way it's done. It's just all a question. You adding here the individual permission. There is no permission file. There is no profile file. They're just a user file. The permissions and the profiles are stored as parameters record inside my parameter file. This is using my CL param class. And that is a system I created a long time ago to store all the things where I don't have a lot of records and don't need to access via a lot of different ways. I store all that in one file, the parameter file, and it is in a system design. It's called name value pair based database. Yeah. I invented that system for me in version 4 or something like that, so a long time ago. And I found out on the web that somebody stole my idea. Can you believe that? It's bad. So somebody had the same idea, and it's used heavily, by example, in the medical application, where a user, a patient, could have 3,000 different symptoms, and having a checkbox for each possible symptom would just make record absolutely impossible to read, use, maintain, and waste the space incredible. So basically, you have a text memo, and in it you have an ini-like structure where you say this parameter equal this value, this parameter equal this value, and so on and so forth, and you store only what you need for each record. I'm using that here. I have a profile record in which I have all the permission matching a profile, and for each user I have a record also matching, containing all its permission. Now, one thing that you want to know about is how to use the system. Now, this is the way I designed it, because I really didn't like the way the user group was working, so I took kind of a really direct, contrary way of doing things. In the code, you're going to do this. If GPO user, so it's a variable that is global to the project, it's an object, it's from the user class, clearly, is authorized, that's the method, and CST per user list. True, then window open, user management. Okay, the guy is authorized to at least list the user. Oops. Otherwise, you are not authorized to use this function. You take that, you copy it anywhere with any permission, and that's all you have to do. The first time you test your system to see if it's working, this is going to be added in the list of permission available automatically. You don't have to go somewhere and create a new permission. You're doing it by just adding that in the code. Now, one thing to see is that I am using here a constant. And the reason for that, it is too easy to mistype the name of the permission and create 20 different permissions for the same thing and never have anything working. So always use constant for that. I'm doing that everywhere for everything, because I'm really sick and tired of looking for that bug when the only bug is that I have big fingers. So that's not cool. Also, the fact that I'm using constant means that I just type CST and I have the list of constant and I can choose in them. So it's called CST per for permission. So if I just type CST per, I have the list of all the permission already created in the thing, and I can just use it this way. I use the automatic completion because I'm a lazy guy and I really don't like to have to remember all this kind of thing just like that. Now, the thing is, you just put that in the code and it adds the permission in the list of available permission in the user list. That means that at that point, each time you're adding a new permission, nobody has it because it was not affected to anybody. You will have to go and add it to whoever has it. It is by design. If you add a new permission, it means that there's a security problem at that level. So it means that giving it personally to anybody who needs it is the right way to go, in my opinion. There's no first permission. There is an admin user that is created at the beginning of the project, and we're going to get to that. And again, if you find holes in the security, please tell me so that we can work on it and solve them as soon as possible. I would really prefer that one of you find it than a hacker later. This permission can be about anything. It doesn't have to be about the UI. It may be that when entering a window, you want to gray out some function. Or it may be that you're going to leave everything active, and when you press on it, the function itself is going to be protected. I personally prefer to do that because this way the user sees the button, tries it, and gets a message saying you're not authorized. If you think this is a problem, contact the system administrator. This way the permission can be adjusted because he knows that he can contact somebody to change that. If the button is grayed out or invisible, cannot click on it, doesn't know why it's not there, and calls the support saying, it's not working. It is working perfectly fine. You're just not authorized to do it. Also, another little trick that you may see here. I am using the mess translate function. I am guessing that most of you don't use that function because your program is only in one language. That is the function that allows you to have several versions of a message depending on the current language. However, in that case, you should still use it even if you're only in one language. The reason for that is that I'm using the secondary syntax, which is in fact the old syntax, with that number here. And that means that that message is stored inside the user management class and not inside each and every of the window or where you're using it. Everywhere you're using the same message coming from the other class. And that's something that you can do even in only one language with the mess translate function. So everything concerning the user permission management is in the user permission management class, including the messages. In order to do that, you do your info, you just do a Control-T, which opens the multi-language interface, and you look for your message. And for that, you go in the combo at the top, you go into the CL user class, and then you can select your message. And he's going to ask you if you want to copy it in your local window, and you're going to say no. I want it to link to the user place. So there, you just have 2 or 3 little tricks that makes your life much easier when you want to manage the permission. Now, this permission can be really anything. By example, you can create a permission that says that the user can save as, which is it can copy an existing document, but it cannot save. It cannot modify an existing document. You can say that the user has access to only documents pertaining to a certain region or a certain language or a certain subject or a certain keyword. You can have a keyword which is the project name, and a user has access only to some project name. All that you can manage any way you want because you are the one doing the test. If the permission is can access only his project, you check what the document is linked to, you go into the list of projects for the user, you compare, and you say yes or no. If the user can access all the projects, you don't do your test. So with that system, you can basically do any kind of restriction either on the data or on the UI.
So Fabrice, basically saying that he's got this out of the can. We wanted to set it up. Anything we wanted to do in terms of controlling security, we're going to need to go in and code.
Yes, you're going to need to add these 5 lines of code at the place that you want to protect. Absolutely. This is the way I chose to do it because trying to do it via a UI like the user groupware is limited to what is in the UI. And most of the time, you need also to protect the data. And I don't see any way to do this kind of thing in a UI because you will have to code extra things for each case. So that's the way I do it.
So you go and create this jazzy new version, you want to pull that set of code in, but we've got these permission things that are kind of embedded in what we're doing. Is there any sort of conflict there, or is there some trick that you got?
So the question that has been asked is what's happening when I'm going to publish the next version of the replication and you included changes in the existing version. Well, you have to include the changes the correct way, the same way than we are talking about when we are talking about the WXReplication case. If it's in the class, you never modify my class, you modify a derived class that you created exactly for that. So you overwrite my function. If it's in the window, you use it as a template to create your own window. If it's in a code somewhere and it's a global procedure, you create your own collection of global procedure and you use that instead. All that are tricks to minimize the amount of a problem when a new version arrives. However, with something as complex as a program like that, as soon as you change things, clearly, when I send a new version out, you will have to check out all the changes that you made. There's no way I can guarantee that all the changes you made will just work like that with the new functionality that I just inserted. That's for sure. There's no miracle there. So I don't have a perfect solution for that. There are some rules to follow to minimize the impact of having a new version coming in. Also, you may not want to take all the stuff that I created in the new version because you don't like some of it. And the good thing is that when I'm making changes, I'm documenting them heavily in the history method of the CL project class. So you can see that between version 0.9 and 0.10, this has changed, this has changed, this has changed, this has changed, and it's by window, by method, by all that. So if you want to take part of it, you copy and paste the changes. You have also in the editor the date and time of all changes, so you can take things like that. Of course, there's a very good chance that at the time you're going to start using the program, you will either use it as is, miracle, everything fits exactly your need, or you will start to modify it like crazy to do this and that and this and that and include it in your program and link into this. And at that point, basically you will have to take the changes piecemeal depending on what you need really in your case. I don't think that there's any better way of doing that. The mesh translate function is part of WinDev, and as soon as you use it, you have a special UI for that, where you have for each language the string corresponding to the value. So if you do any translation via Google or anything else, that's where you should do it. I'm sorry, but it's not in the code. The messages that are used in mesh translate are stored by default in their object. So any translated message that is pertaining to one window is inside the window object. Anything that is for a class is inside the class. So if you take the class and put it somewhere else in another project, you will have all your message translated with it. After that, you have translated message that are on the scope of the whole project. When you create them on the project code, they are at the level of the project, and they are in the WDP file, the project file. What I'm doing here is just saying, I don't want to use the default solution of using a message that is part of this window. I want to use the message I already have in my class, and this is why I'm using that thing. Now, if you use Google Translate, which I don't, So I'm not sure exactly of what you're talking about. You should not use Google Translate at that level. You should do the Control T to open the UI of Mesh Translate, and in there you have English, French, Chinese, German, whatever. And where you are here, you're going to do your your Google Translate and have the different value. Here, in the regular syntax, you will see the message in your current language, but you will just go on it, do Control T, and you will see all the message. Does that answer your question?
I'll look at it from the project, but I mean, what it raises is actually a better solution than you've done there, to have a list of frequently used phrases like unauthorized user, dysfunction, or whatever, and then store them somewhere else and reference those, rather than keep translating them as you go.
Oh yeah, if it's the same one, absolutely. Now remember that there is a translating tool that they sell separately, WDMSG. Yeah. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no, it is working. The UI to do the translation that they're providing is a piece of crap. Now, that was clearly written by an intern with his feet. There's no question about that. However, the part that is interesting is that it can extract all the message in one language from the project. At that point, you have a text file. You can directly go in Notepad and do the translation. Or you can do it is a formatted text file. You can do your own UI. In fact, I had 2 or 3 different clients that I know I've made their own UI. They're not giving it away, so no luck there. But it's quite easy to do a UI to process a text file. At that point, you translate all that, or you give the UI to an external translator. Once it's done, reintegrate. And if your UI is well done, and you have the same string to translate 25 times, you're going to enter the translation 1, and it's going to go in the 24 other places. At that point, it's not a problem. You're doing it once. If you're doing from inside the code without any external tool help, yes, storing it in a separate object may be a solution. However, the risk is that as soon as you need that window in another project, you don't have the translation anymore. Because if you store the message in the CL user class and you move the windows using the message in another project without that class, the translation is not there. So, yes, you can do it, but here I'm doing it because this message is in fact a message of the class. And another way of doing that would have been to create a function in the class saying, in fact, I realized that it may be a better idea, there will be less code to type each time, display message authorization in the CL user, and the class itself is displaying one message once, and you will have less keyboard manipulation. I'm probably going to change that. Thank you for the idea. Discussion, always discussion. Suddenly you see things in another way. You see there was a problem, because it is a little painful each time to type that and redo it. However, if you just copy and paste that code everywhere, it's there. Yeah, absolutely. Code brick is one of the way of doing that. So I told you that the sets of permission can be grouped in profiles. Several profiles can be added to a user. We talked about that. Profiles are added, not subscribed. And to add a permission in the list of permission, just add that test wherever you need it with whatever new permission. Now, one trick again, I'm using the CST per, which is constant permission user list. The text that is inside that constant is the text that is going to be displayed in the user permission management UI. So that's where you want to put a nice text saying has the right to list the user, or just user list anything you want that is meaningful, and that is, it can be with spaces and commas and whatever you want, so it's not a problem. It's just a question of being unique, and that's not a real problem. But to be really readable, if you start doing some kind of abbreviation, nobody's going to understand it in the UI. Yes.
I think I know the answer to the question, but I'll try it anyway.
Okay.
We have these documents and permissions. Who can access them?
Mhm.
You say user. Okay. Can a user be a role?
No.
You have 15 people that is a user type.
Not in this version, no. That would be the case if a user is, it's perfectly possible to do it, but I do not have a role file, I don't have a type file. I'm not managing that at that level right now. But you can add it quite easily.
Yeah, that's what I think so too, because user would be a role,
Mm-hmm.
and you get the role from logging on and in
Yeah.
security.
Mm-hmm. But that's what I was saying. The profiles are added, they are not subscribed, and that's the problem. If the profile was subscribed, that would be your role, and it could work that way. You would just change the role, and suddenly everybody who's in the role would have that new permission. This is not how it's managed at this point. It could be modified, it could be added, it could be a setting set in saying it's there is a subscription to the role or not. All that are options that are possible. I'd be happy to code them for you if you want to pay me to do it, no problem. But at some point I have to make choices, to take decision, and of course they will not work in all cases. There's no question about that. And I am trying to add lots of function in this, and I'm not going to spend more time on that before quite some time, if ever, because for me currently it works. That should be self-explanatory. Do not allow any export, automatic application functionality or whatever it's called, or printing. Remove all these options from everywhere. Replace it by a coded export if you need it. If you need to export, you code it yourself so that you know exactly what is exported, by whom. You can log it, you can verify that they are allowed to do it, and you can even send a message to a supervisor saying, hey, your guy just exported 5,000 customers. Is that right? Okay? This is extremely important, because a disgruntled employee who leaves the company and lives with the customer file and go to the concurrent with the customer file under the arm is something that's happening all the time. In fact, in some company, it is the condition to be hired is to come with the the customer file of the previous company. Otherwise, they don't take you. We live in a wonderful world. So, if you need to be able to export data, restrict it as much as you can, and log it, and let everybody know that it is logged. If somebody at the time is going to press on the export, has a big message saying this export is being logged as 3,000 user and is going to be sent to Mr. Your supervisor, if they really have the right and they are doing it for a legitimate reason, no problem. If not, said, okay, if I press that button, I'm screwed.
If you see that message, you're screwed.
No, if it can be that you are trying something. Okay, I'm curious, how is this export working? Ding, ding, ding. Oh, I'm not going to press that button. Let's go back. It's possible.
It's the second message. Press the button, it says the second message.
Okay. However you want to set it up. of course, you need to set all this kind of thing everywhere in the code and object by yourself. There's no way to delete all those permission, all those automatic stuff everywhere just by checking something. So I'm pretty sure there's a lot of fields, a lot of table, a lot of things like that where I have currently forgotten to remove the system, this, the automatic, the print button export, lots of them. I didn't have the time to go through everything and check everything. I have to tell you that the last weeks have been kind of a race to have something kind of rounded up to show it to you. It was fun. So, currently also there is no max export available in WxEDM. There is an export button, file by file. Currently that's all there is, because I thought that for that program, when I need one file to work on with something external, I export it, I re-import it, and I'm done. I didn't have the need, so the functionality is not available right now. It doesn't mean it won't be in the future, of course. Backups. Now, backups should be an added value to your system. It should not be a security flaw in any case, which means that when you create a backup, if you need a backup, it should be encrypted. It may also need to be encrypted twice, because there's a big difference between a backup and a desktop to the tower. The backup is going to be on a small support that can move away from you and be at the disposal of a hacker for a very long time. They just need to steal a backup, and then they work on it for a month if need be. So, if you do backups on anything, USB keys, CDs, tapes, whatever, you may want to first create a zip on your hard drive with the data file already encrypted in it, and then re-encrypt the zip file before putting it on the backup. This way, I'm sure that the hacker will be a little more pissed off and will be much more happy on our side. Now, I know it's not nice for the hacker, but hey, at some point. So, if your database is already encrypted, you can just copy it to your backup. If your database is not encrypted, you're not in the correct room. Remember that the backup can be stolen, and they will have lots of time to decrypt it, so that is already said. Zip the backup, encrypt. But that's the good point. There is no backup functionality in WxEDM, and I do not plan on creating one anytime soon. The replication is going to do the backup. However, I plan to expand the replication to include in it an automatic backup functionality. And this one should be amusing to create, because it would be basically, you put a support in it, SD, USB stick, CD, whatever you're using, external hard drive, and on that you will have the small replication engine with its own set of file. And it will be set up so that when you plug it in, you activate it, and it just look what has changed in the other file and pull it as a regular replication. And suddenly your replication tool has become a backup tool at the same time. So that's the plan in the future when I have nothing to do. When I have nothing to do. Okay. It's the end of the security chapter. I kid you not, it is really the end. This last slide. The security is never perfect, and we have the proof of that all the time. However, it doesn't have to be a comic strip. It doesn't have to be a joke. You can create a security that is at least half serious. If you do that, if you do your best to create a security and there's still a problem, well, you can tell to yourself, it's not my fault, I really did the best I could do with the tool I had. Remember one thing, you are not a security specialist. I am not a security specialist. And it is nearly impossible for somebody to test his own security, because he's sure that his security is good, otherwise he wouldn't have divided it that way. So have your security tested by somebody else. And again, Francis Morel, French guy, security specialist, is testing the security of your application. He will try to break into your license system. He will try to break into your database. He will try to break into everything. And if he succeeds, he will tell you, this is how I did it. At that point, you can do something. You have an external test that is worth something. I didn't have the time to do it yet, but as soon as I have a day or two, I will ask him to test the security of WxEDM so that I can see what I forgot and improve it. And he was kind enough to tell me that he would not make me pay for it because it's for the open source community, so I think it should mention it. Now, human is often the weak link, very, very often. But you shouldn't be that human. Leave that to the user, please. We can just reduce the target surface. We can reduce the amount of data any user can access. We can reduce the importance of the IT guy. We can reduce the number of attack avenues. I have absolutely nothing against IT guys. I just don't want to depend on them for the security of my data. That's all. They can help. They will help. They will be the first line of defense. I don't want them to be the only one. So, there is absolutely no point in encrypting your database if you're not doing everything else. If you encrypt your database today and you don't put in place an anti-debug solution, I promise you that I can give your database and your program to my friend in France, and 5 minutes later, he's going to tell me the password is there. Enjoy. He will not tell me your password, of course. Francis is extremely serious, and he will never, in fact, he will ask you to prove that you are the owner of anything that you ask him to test. Because otherwise, anybody could use this service to hack somebody else. So part of the protocol when you want to test something is that you have to prove that you are the rightful owner of the software. But in theory, anybody with this kind of knowledge can do it in 5 minutes tops. So think about it, look at your application and ask yourself, what do I do? And we are going to the multi-language part of the system. Okay, the UI. For the UI, PCSoft did a very good job of offering tools to manage multi-language. In the UI, you can directly say, okay, my project uses French, English, German, Russian, Chinese, whatever. It can manage up to 64 languages at a time. If you need more than 64 languages, you need a second instance of your project. That's the way it is. I don't know why this 64 language limit looks kind of strange to me, but that's the way it is. It was 16 at the beginning, and they increased it tremendously to 64. Whatever. You do that directly with the built-in tools, no problem. You have in each window, in each field, the possibility to do that. And you also have this WMSG tool that allows you to export everything, translate it, import everything. As much as possible, when you translate something, try to have a translator whose original language is your target language. If he doesn't understand something in your own language, he can ask you. But if he is, by example, if you want to translate your software in French, you call me. If you want to translate your language, your software in English, you want a native English speaker. Because I will make much more mistakes if I translate in English. So if you have translation problem, try to find somebody who's really, that is the language he's using. Now, I know some people who do not use the internal translation system for that. They have their own hyperfile table with all the translation in it, and they're using code to automatically replace all the caption and all the stuff in each window. It is kind of a nightmare to do, and I wouldn't advise to go that way. Now, the problem is about the content. And there are many ways of managing several languages inside your database for your content. And why do you need that? Well, imagine that you are a manufacturer of car parts, and you have customers in Mexico and in the US. You're going to need a description of each part in Spanish and in English. Imagine that you work in Switzerland. You're going to need that in German, French, Romansh, and Italian, because they have 4 official languages in a small country of Switzerland. So, how do you do that? Well, you can have in your file as many fields as you support languages. If your number is never going to change, you could do that. However, nothing says that all your records are going to be used in every language. You can have parts that are sold only here and not in Mexico, and parts that are sold only in Mexico and not here. Also, the multi-language content is not always a text string. You can have a price that is different per country, per language. You could have lots of different cases that makes the translation of content kind of a nightmare. So, how do I do that for WxEDM, and in which case are we here? Well, first, for the content, I forgot to tell you, there's of course no built-in tools in WinDev to manage multi-user, multi-language content. In WxEDM, the content is either available in French or in English. The document is there, it's in English, it's in French. There is no direct translation, and there's no link that say, okay, this document is the French translation of this English document. It could be the case. It could be needed in some application that you need to have for each document. You need to send it to a translator, and when you have it, you incorporate it. It's perfectly possible. Not the case here. So there's no link between documents in different languages. It's just basically 2 different files. You could have 1 file per language. However, I don't like to have several files and juggle between them. So what I did is I introduced a language number field in each file that needs a support of multilingual. So if we look in the document file, by example, we have this field here, I2 language number, that contains the language code for the record. So when I have a record, I know that it is in English because the value of that field is nation English. For some time, I was not able to decide if I was going to use numeric code or text code like US, FR, and things like that. FR, US, GB, and all that would have been much more readable when reading the data directly in the hyperfile control center. However, that would have been just for me, because nobody else is allowed to go in there, remember? So that was really not a good reason to use that. And because PCSoft is providing us with a nation function, and with constant already made for each language, nation English, nation French, values are 3 and 5 if you're interested in that, I decided that I would use directly this in my code everywhere to say, okay, it's nation English, nation French, and store that directly as an integer in the file. And that's all for the multi-language. So it's basically a simple solution, just a code in the file, and after that you want French document, English document, all documents, you ignore that parameter. Now the UI. We went quickly over it before. You may see it better here. Type of document up there. You can decide that you want to import all types of documents that are currently supported. I plan to support also XLS, ODT, that's OpenOffice files, RTF. RTF, I can do it quite easily. I have all the tools for that. I don't know. I also plan to support miscellaneous files, and that would be files that I don't know how to process internally. I don't know how to display them. It's just file I don't know. But I can still store it in the database and add keywords to it. So I can find it, export it, do whatever I want with it, and that's it. So there's a lot of a possibility of improvement at that level. If you have files that you want to process in, you can add them, of course. The UI I chose is those are checkboxes, and basically each checkbox reacts like a push button that stays push when it's selected. And the reason for that, again, is touchscreen UI. So you go with your big finger, you select the one you want. Once you said, okay, I want to import this type of file, you're telling the system in which language are the file that you are importing. Here, in that case, I said, look, take all the things that are in the examples and automatically detect if they are in French or in English, or in German, or in Australian, or in Italian, or in Spanish, or I think it's all. Because we are supporting only 2 languages to manage everything, but the code for the automatic recognition is working against 7 or 8 different languages. Once we have selected the language here, we are managing the keywords. So here, on my machine, this directory is going to be in F, my document, professional, WxEDM examples. Okay, and because those are selected, it can be also automatic English sample exemple français. This is the whole path of each and every file. When we are checking that option, path, use the path element as keyword, every word that is in the path is going to be used as keyword. So there's going to be my, ejected is too short. There's going to be document, professional, WxEDM, example, English, sample. All these words are going to be linked to any document that is in there. Basically, you can find your file by its original directory. Okay? The file name is also going to be used, and that is not an option. Here you can decide that you want to use the path as keywords or not, but all the elements of the file name, if your file is called "it's my file and I like it," well, every word of that sentence is going to be a keyword. Every word of at least 3 characters. That's how I coded it. Under that, it's not significant enough. Now, here, I also checked manual keywords. In that case, I have access to the field that is right there that allows me to enter keyword or to paste the text here. Any text is valid, any length. It's a text memo, so you have up to 2 GB. You could have a string of keyword that is much longer than the document itself, depending on what you want to do. And once again, every word that is in there is going to be used as a keyword. So if you had here enter your keyword or paste the text here, you would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 keywords. The system is using the same code to extract words from this string that is using to extract words from the document. And that is remove all the separator, and then everything that remains is a word. We're going to go into that. The files and directory selector, we're going to go in details into that later, so I'm not going to go too deep in that. But it is basically a tree view. You can set it to any root level by just saying my selector equals C colon backslash my document, and it will start there. If you don't give anything, it's all the drive of the machine. And then at the end, when you get the value from it, you just do my string equal my selector, and you will get everything that is selected, character return separated, full path of the directory or full path of the files that are selected. After that, it's up to you to process that and to either process a full directory or a file, depending on what you need to do. So let's look at the first step. Full indexation of documents. Well, why do I want to index every last word that I have in my document? It's because I have no clue of what I currently have on my hard drive. I forgot about probably 95% of the content of my hard drive because I'm just a pack rat pack, which I don't know which direction it is. And I kept all the documents with all my professional contacts for the last 25 years. And from time to time, I'm here and I say, I did that before. I have a document on that. I described that. I did an estimate on that. I'm sure of it. And then I spend the next hour and a half trying to find it everywhere. Who did that? I can't remember. But I know it's about this. And if I can search on this, and I find my document, I have way less work to do because all the description is already done. I can reuse it. So that's why I wanted to have a full indexation of document. Doc files, HTML files, text files, PDF files who have a text content. Well, yeah, I think that's all. In the future, of course, ODT, RTF, everything that has a text content that I can get to. Yeah. Images, clearly not.
How do you know that it's what you detect is text inside?
No, it's because I'm very, very smart.
Because you're a member of the Rat Pack.
No, how do I know that how do I know that the file has text content? Well, I try to extract it with a method that works with this type of file, and if the result is nothing, then there's no text that is accessible. By example, a PDF can have either text content or can be just images one after the other. Each page can be just an image. If each page is an image, the PDF to text function stupidly will return nothing. So I have nothing to index. If it returns something, I can index it. That's what I'm doing for each type of file. That's all. There's really nothing special about that.
You're not using any external tools to do that.
Depends on the type of file. I have PDF to text to manage the PDF, but I don't have a function in W language for Word files.
What?
Word files, doc. So for that, I need to use an external tool, and we're going to get to that very soon, in fact. So how do you manage that? Well, there is a way to do that directly in Hyperfile SQL. It's called full index that you can set up on basically anything. And nope, once again, I'm not using the built-in tool. It kind of sounds like always the same song, sorry about that, but there are reasons why I'm not using it. I would be very happy not to have to code all that. I'm not coding it just for the pleasure. The first thing is that this thing is limited to text fields and memo. And you may say, well, you want to index text anyway. Well, yes and no. First, of course, it has absolutely no clue on how to manage a doc file or a PDF file or anything of the kind, just text file and text memo. So it means that when I extract my thing, I would have to store it in a text memo in order for the system to be able to automatically index it. It just turned out that I'm doing just that, to have a quick preview in text, fast and easy. But it's not, I could not do it, and I want to be still able to index the thing. Also, I may want at some point to index other fields of other files. By example, if I have invoices, internal invoices that I want to index, I want to be able to index also the quantity field or the code that is numeric. And that is not possible with a full index. It is also limited to full words, entire words. It is not supporting any kind of phonetic or fuzzy search, just exact search. It is specific to HFSQL, and I'm trying to create a program that can be used with whatever database you guys like. So I don't know how Postgres is managing that, how MS SQL is managing that, but I am sure that they're not managing it the same way. And the way to access that thing is pure HF. And it is monolingual. There's no support of several languages in any way of working in that system. The phonetic function exists in W language, but even if you're using the US version of the program, it is doing French phonetic. I kid you not. Yeah. Not even that. For all those reasons, I decided not to use their system, and I continue to use the system I've been using for the last 15 years at least, which is my own dictionary file. So in WxEDM, in the analysis, you will see that there is a document file, and there is a dictionary file. My dictionary file is multilingual. It is multilingual. Okay, it's not fuzzy, it's fuzzy. Sorry, I was really tired when I... It is fuzzy too, yeah. Phonetic search using SoundX, and it includes automatic language detection. All things that are not supported at all by the built-in tools.
And how do you take out the A's, twos?
You're going to see that.
Is it part of that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Let's see. So that is what you have. You have the document here. All the information of the document, original directory, things like that. And you have the dictionary. And in there, you have basically 1 word per line. So that's a lot of lines, that's for sure. This functionality costs in terms of database size. There's no question about it. Yes?
Is there a distinction between the keywords that you specifically identify to a document as opposed to just the text that you extract from it?
No.
My thought there is the keyword kind of is more important to you compared to text in terms of locating something.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and at this point the answer is no. It is quite easy to implement. I didn't need it, I did not implement it right now, but yes, keywords that you enter manually could have a higher weight than words that are inside the document. However, you think that the keywords you enter manually are more important, and somebody else may think that the words that are inside the document are more important. So at that point, I did not implement that because I was not sure that there was one right answer to a question that nobody had asked me already. So I kind of wait to see what's really needed in real life to see what we are doing. Because personally, I'm not sure that the keywords for me are more important. It may be the case, in some case, not in other. So do we have an option? Do we have several cases possible? Is it more option for the search? Or is it becoming a gas factory and nobody is going to be able to use it? Lots of questions at that level that I'm not sure how to answer at this point.
So in the dictionary, is it identifying what was a keyword and what was a document, or it's just a word?
At this point, it's just a word. Yeah, it would be very easy to add a field like that, but then it means that you would have twice the same word, sometimes, one as a keyword and one as a document. It's possible. It's absolutely possible. So, for each document, many words, or just one or none, depending on what is in the document. In there you have the full value, which is here, US word, and you have the phonetic value calculated by Soundex. We're going to see how it's done later. And of course, you have the I2 language number, the I2 language number that is right here at the end, that identify this word as being French or being English. And after that, it's up to you to add as many languages, of course, as you need. When we're going to do a search on the thing, we're going to have a query that looks for the word, either for the phonetic value, or for the full word, or with the start with here on this one. And we're going to have also a parameter on the language number that we're either going to use or to ignore. And that gives us a lot of flexibility in the search. So this is how we're doing the full indexation. In order, we are extracting the text content, if any, and that is the answer of your previous question. Depending of the document type, we are using a different method. So for each document type, I try to find the easiest method to do that. So for PDF, it's PDF to text. For HTML, it's HTML to text. You see a pattern here. For a doc file, a Word document, there is no doc to text. Shame on PCSoft, they didn't do that one. So I'm using at that level a tool called Gembox. This is a .NET assembly. During the session on WxEDM, I am not going to enter in details on how to use .NET assembly. We just don't have the time to spend on that part of the technique. The Gembox solution itself, which is a paying solution, but quite reasonable. And again, I'm not getting any percentage, so that's not a problem. Is extremely interesting for several reasons. It allows you to process a Word document without Word installed, without LibreOffice installed, without OpenOffice installed, all by itself. It allows you to read the document, do the search in it, replace in it, everywhere in the document, in the header, in the everywhere, merge things into the document, print the document, save as PDF, save as HTML. I think there's a save as JPEG also. Lots of very, very cool stuff. And one of the things that I like really a lot about that tool is that you can put that on your WebDev server and you can do all your manipulation on your document as soon as they are uploaded. If you try to do that using OLE automation with Word on your WebDev server, your WebDev server is going to crash. The reason for that is that OLE automation is not multi-entry. Only one can be run at a time. If you have several users, you're basically screwed. Yes, Tim? Sorry? Okay. So we're going to stop very soon? That's what you're telling me? Okay. Now I don't want to go over because last year people are started to beat on me because I was too long, so I'm trying to stop this year. So the Gembox solution is extremely interesting because on a WebDev server you can have 100 people uploading document, and in the background you're transforming that in a PDF, HTML, doing whatever you need to do, storing that, all that without crashing your system. It is amazingly not using that much processing time to do that. So it is really, I like that stuff. It is also much easier to use that to do a complex search and replace in a Word document than to use OLE automation. I don't know if you know that, but there is a bug in the search and replace of the OLE automation. That bug has been there for about 10 years and it has never been corrected. If you try to do a search and replace in an open document in Word, it is going to do a search and replace everywhere. You save the macro of that like you always do when you want to code OLE automation. You use that macro inside your program, and it's not going to replace all the cases. Because when it's run via OLE automation, it is not going through all the section of the Word document. So you need to create a much more complex code that starts to list all the sections, then go into each section, then do a search in each section. I know I had to code that for a customer. It was lots of fun. Lots of fun. And everybody is complaining about it in every languages, and Microsoft is doing nothing. And has been running for a long time. So with Gembox, you search and replace and you're done. And so there is no search and replace or version or anything like that in WxEDM because there was no need at that point. But there is open, load, save, and all this kind of stuff. And that's how you do it. And I think we're going to stop there. Yeah, we're going to stop there. It's time. And we will restart from slide 36 tomorrow to tell you everything about the whole indexation process.